Thank you for having me.
So, you are a professor, and a lot of students, are in high school right now and thinking about what they're going to do, but also just thinking about what university and college really look like. So that's one of the reasons why I thought it would be so great to hear from you. So, can you tell students a little bit about how you got into this job, how you got into this field?
Yeah, I can do that. I did my PhD in English. I did an undergrad at the U of A. I applied to University of Guelph. I did my MA there, and then I did my PhD at York University. And I live here in Toronto now because of that. After my PhD, I got a postdoc, which is something that PhD graduates sometimes get. That was federally funded, and I got to work out that postdoc at the University at Buffalo. So I drove down there once a week, and I got to work with really cool people. Then I took a hiatus. I switched jobs for a while, and now I find myself back here teaching my favorite subject, which is literary theory. And I'm technically working out at Queens, but I'm doing it remotely at home. So this is my classroom.
And a classroom full of books, which I love.
Yes.
Um, so, what a lot of students might not know is exactly what literary theory is. So, can you explain that?
Yeah, literary theory is a kind of philosophy of literature. So when you study uh, fiction or drama, and you talk about their effects, you talk about the role in society that this piece of literature has actually accomplished. You talk about the theory of it, like what are the ideas behind it? What are the philosophical arguments behind all of these pieces of literature? And they kind of for as many books that have been written in the world, they all kind of follow like a similar trajectory in the history of literary analysis. So my job is to kind of like document it, record it, learn it, and contribute to it. So it's basically the philosophy of literature.
Very cool. So, what does a typical workday look like for a professor?
Well, right now in COVID times, I'm at this desk looking into this portal. But I kind of toggle back between being in the classroom, so being either in this portal or in the physical classroom, and then reading books. So I'm either reading pieces of fiction, pieces of literature, or secondary literature research on these pieces of literature. So I'm reading, I'm teaching, and I'm a participating member of my department.
Very cool. What do you think is most challenging about being a professor?
It's a difficult question to answer because there are so many challenges. I think on a tactical level, balancing research and teaching is always really hard because, as you know, teaching is a very laborious profession for various reasons. But then on top of that, our job is to have a body of our own research that inform that teaching. So you have to do both at once. So at a practical level, that's the most challenging part of my job. But on a more personal level, lately it's been being able to inspire students who feel discouraged. I'm feeling that burden increasingly now. I think there's a lot of anxiety in this cultural milieu right now, and students are feeling it, faculty's feeling it, a lot of different workplaces are feeling it. And so as a teacher and as a leader of education, I have to figure out how to be responsible for that and carrying that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because I think as a teacher, whatever level you're at, you are expected to be a leader, right? And to be a leader in motivation, but also I think we sometimes underestimate the value of hope, right? And I think in
Yes.
current time, it's something where we're trying to understand what community means in a really different way, right? So that's a challenge for students right now, as well as for teachers, no matter your level, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
what students might not know yet, having not been to university, is that as a professor, like you talked about the responsibility to research. So if you're in English, that might be something like researching a literary theory in your field or researching a new perspective on something. In science, that might be research in a lab, but you're expected even more so to be that leader and somebody at the
Yes.
forefront of all these conversations, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a leader in the classroom, but also in your field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons that I actually also thought it would be really valuable for students to hear from you, because your field, not just now, but we've known each other for a long time. And in all of the different, Dr. Facundo is what I call a Renaissance person. Dr. Facundo is an artist, is a musician, is a writer. Whatever you take on, you are also a black belt in Kung Fu. Is that right?
Yeah, Wing Chun, Kung Fu, and yeah,
Yeah.
I do martial arts.
So
Yeah.
whatever you do, you are an expert in, right? But because you're a leader in all these in all of these avenues, I've always known you to be really invested in creating, and specifically creating and asking questions about things regarding equity. And this is such a huge topic of conversation in our classrooms and in our society right now. So what can you tell us? Let's start on like the personal level, because we both grew up in Northern Alberta.
We did.
And uh, you are somebody who is from a non-dominant group in multiple ways, right?
Mhm.
And I know that can't have been easy in Northern Alberta, especially at the time that we grew up. So what kinds of roadblocks have you experienced? And also what ways have you found to thrive as somebody who's from a non-dominant group?
Yeah, so I guess I'll begin by actually mentioning my dimensions of diversity because as you say, I occupy a lot. So I'm from a Filipino family, so I'm a visible minority, a Filipino immigrant family, but I was born in Alberta. Um, I am queer, so I have a wife. I am non-binary, so I identify neither as a man or a woman, but a little bit of both. Um, and yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it. I have to say that me personally, I've been quite privileged in my experience in these positions. Any kind of discrimination that was leveraged against me, I didn't really feel it directly at an institutional level. I may have gotten, I mean, like I lived in Berlin for 6 months. That wasn't easy as an Asian person. Um, but in terms of the workplace, I've been lucky because the university is a safe space to kind of explore these subject positions and the power structures that accompany it in a safe way and in the way of study. But when it comes to work, it is difficult to kind of say, oh, this is because I was this, or this happened because I was that. I am bitter, like in my long kind of winding career journey. I still have a hint of bitterness that I applied for a queer theory job, queer studies job in the English department at a university, and they hired a white guy who is less qualified than me, and I was angry, but I have to say that dwelling on that and attributing my subject position to their decision wouldn't help me, like wouldn't help my mental health. It just proved to me that number one, unconscious bias is real. Number two, it's not material, so it's not anything that I can really hold on to, nor is it helpful to hold on to. And number three, because the unconscious bias may or may not have led the department to make that decision, that's not a space that I want to be in. So right now, workplaces are really talking about diversity and inclusion, doing unconscious bias training, thinking about unconscious bias training and privilege. And so there are so many workspaces and work environments that are doing great work about creating space for people who occupy an equity-seeking group position. So.
And so, that's one of the reasons why I've always been such an admirer of your work as well, and in so many ways, because you obviously are very well versed in all of this and really knowledgeable. But you're also always an activist. So, what kinds of action can you take to thrive as an individual, but also to maybe create more spaces for people like you do with Pride Canada?
Yeah, like that, I think Pride at Work Canada is a great example. I was elected to be a board member for this nonprofit organization called Pride at Work Canada. Look it up. They do great work because what they do is companies all over Canada can purchase a membership to Pride at Work Canada. And what that does is that it connects them to a network of people with like minds who want to create more spaces and more spaces of leadership for the LGBTQ2+ community, right? And so our organization is that connector, is that network, and it encourages organizations to do the work themselves and create the spaces. And we can do benchmarking, like we can compare one organization to another. We can organize conferences and talk about, mental health, disability, race in conversation with LGBTQ2+ peoples. So and now this notion of intersectionality, the fact that this is a complex notion, but it's basically the fact that a person can occupy more than one dimension of diversity. So I'm not only queer, I'm also a person of color. So that intersection is something that previously we were only talking about in the university, but now it's such a trend in the workplace. So the conversations are happening. So the way that you thrive is to take part. Like you can follow thought leaders on Instagram, like Rachel Cargold, for example. You can follow people on Facebook, like use these social media tools to become informed about how people are narrating their own journeys in really positive and self-fulfilling ways.
Love that. Wonderfully said. So let's go back a little bit more personal. Did you have any funny detours along the way to this job, or any, like fascinating jobs? Because I think one of the things that maybe students or maybe their parents, I know my parents, sort of expect is that you go to school, pick a job, do that job, right? And that's kind of how it used to be maybe in my parents' time. Definitely wasn't my experience. Yeah. And it definitely is an experience for students now. So any funny jobs on the way?
Yeah. So as I said, I left academia for a while. And I went corporate. I went full corporate with a PhD in English. I worked for a management consulting group called Logical Design Solutions, and that's all a bunch of long words, but it's basically it's basically watch Office Space, and you know what consulting will be. You know what consulting is, but it's like this business that sells strategy to large businesses, and the way that we do that is we build like digital experiences. We build websites, intranets for them, and it's supposed to realize their strategy or realize their brand and whatever. I did that for almost 4 years between my postdoc and when I got this job. And it was a strange detour because had I not left it, I wouldn't have ended up here. And so, and along the way, because it's digital strategy, digital in the digital industry, it proved to me that a PhD in English, there's no set career path for a PhD in English. And so, you can use the skills that you cultivate in your education for many different paths. Another thing that I learned in management consulting is that 65 to 85% of jobs have not been invented yet. So so this is an opportunity for students to do what they love, not because of like some naive passion, like, oh, I want to be an artist, so I'm going to do art. Like, do art and then become a visual designer. Do art and become like all of these jobs that don't actually exist yet have the potential in you if you just, you know, apply your passion to a craft or to an object of knowledge. So
There's very few jobs anymore that you can actually just say, I want to be this, and you go and take, you know, X number of years, and then you get that job, right? Most
yeah,
jobs you need a undergrad and a diploma, or you need a diploma and an apprenticeship, right? It's all about kind of the combination of the skills, like you said, that you get in maybe a university or a college degree, but then also the experience or the you know, the kind of maybe the qualities that you might bring to the job and the creativity, whatever field you're in, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're absolutely right. A lot of the jobs that our students are going to do are not, haven't been invented yet. You know, like
yeah.
I always tell my students to remember that I'm super young and like really close to them and super relatable and cool. But, you know, when I was in high school, I remember computer class was about learning how to send an email. So
Yeah.
nobody imagined, you know, that you could be a YouTuber as a job, right?
I know. I'm still trying to accept that that's a real job, but it is.
Yeah.
It's a super high paying job.
My 7-year-old, that is his current career aspiration. So we'll
Amazing.
see.
Amazing.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the main takeaway is that I had no idea that getting a PhD in English would make me a good business person.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know that job existed.
And would
So,
also allow you to have like the passion to be an activist, and also, you know, you're also an artist, you're also a musician. Those things all still inform what you do. Doesn't have
right.
to be the job that you make money with, but all of those passions create a kind of happiness, which I think is another thing we don't talk enough about careers,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
being happy in it, right?
It's true. And that's a good segue into another point that I wanted to make. I left that consulting job. Like it paid a lot of money. I was making a lot of money. I wasn't even working that much. I was doing like 9 to 5, no, hardly any overtime. I was just traveling to New Jersey every once in a while, New York every once in a while. And I hated it. I'm like, you know, like, and it was really comfortable. I'm like, I finally made it, stable job, stable money. I gotta get out of here. Because it wasn't my passion, and it gave me the opportunity. That detour was also necessary because it gave me the opportunity to think about, okay, what is it about literary studies that really inspired me? And it was this link between reading literature, the capacity to study literature, and its impact on mental health.
Yeah.
And so without being so miserable in a well-paying job, I wouldn't have had the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to teach at the university for a while, maybe for a little bit on an ongoing basis. But really what my new focus is I'm going to train as a psychotherapist, which is why I'm a candidate at the Toronto Institute for Contemporary Psychoanalysis. And being a therapist and being a literary scholar definitely complement each other. So I intend to have this hybrid role that I'm creating for myself in the future. And so many people with a PhD in English that I know have created their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do the jobs not exist, you also have the agency to create it once you get there.
Yeah. I also think too, you never know the thing that's going to inspire you to find that path. Because
Exactly.
like I know you and I have known each other for a long time, and I remember, you know, I've known you since your first year of university, and I remember talking to you about English class in university, and I remember when we first talked about theory, and oh yeah, what do you think about Freud, and what do you think about Jung, and obviously you were invested in it. You know, you've been invested in it for a long time, but at that point, nobody knew that you never knew you were going to go to the Toronto Institute of
No,
Psychoanalysis. You know, you
no.
probably didn't even know that existed. I definitely didn't.
No,
So
no, I didn't know it existed. No, yeah, people are being trained through that to become therapists,
yeah,
and it all began with my reading of Freud. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many moments where I think back about, although I always knew I wanted to be with people, there's definitely teachers or classes or even books that
Hmm.
kind of led me to get to this present moment.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
never know where it's going to be, right?
It's true. It's true.
So maybe
Yeah.
it is on YouTube or it
Yeah.
is in the mall, but
It is in the mall.
the idea,
Definitely in the mall.
clearly in the mall. But the idea is that invest in your skills, invest in your focus, and be willing to change your mind, right? And
Exactly.
not a waste of time, right?
yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. And the other thing is I've always wanted to um I decided that I wanted to get a PhD when I was 15 in English class in grade 11. And so I was highly invested in this narrative. But I had to stay open and go through that detour. And here I am back. And so I feel like staying open um, is probably the best thing that you can do.
I love that. That's such
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I think this is a lot of really important insight, and I really appreciate you sharing your professional and your personal experience.
I'm honored. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you.